Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor from, again, Under Siege, New Orleans. The last time we recorded, 2 weeks ago, we were expecting a hurricane. We are now on today's the 28th.
Yep.
We are about 5 hours away from landfall of a Category 2 hurricane just below us. So the next recording we have may be at periscope depth. It's
I think, Tom, is that why you're doing the virtual look? You're not
That's-
actually in New Orleans. You're just
That's
like,
right.
Your hologram is there.
I'm actually in Chicago.
Smart man.
And as always, joined by our dear friend and sidekick, Rachi Messing from, still in Baltimore, Rachi?
Still in Baltimore right now. Yep.
All right, excellent. And we're very pleased to have as our guest today, Jonathan Maas, who's the managing director of the Maas Consulting Group. And, show my lack of geography. I know you're in Great Britain. I have no idea where, Jonathan. I would automatically say London, which probably every American would say, right?
Yeah. I'm just off the south coast, below London.
Nice.
It's called Brighton.
Right. Yeah, I've heard
So
of
you're
that.
close.
I thought that was in New York. It's a Brighton Beach.
I'm very close to Washington as well.
Yeah, probably closer, almost closer to Washington. Than Tom is. So
most definitely, we have a Washington here in Sussex.
Nice.
Nice.
And are you a native of that area, Jonathan? Is that where you grew up, or?
I was born in London and grew up in London, but my parents had cottages in this area, and my wife's family inhabited large parts of this area. So it made sense when we had children and we're moving out of London to come down here to close to the family homestead.
Right. And
so, yes.
Is that the area where Sherlock Holmes retired to raise bees? I know he retired to the coast.
Now, that's funny you should say that, because I do the family tree, which is a fascinating pastime, especially now. And I recall reading someone in our family tree joined Conan Doyle for his beekeeping one day and had lunch there or something with a whole bunch of other people.
Excellent.
And when I first moved to London as a young boy, as a young man, I suppose, I lived just around the corner from Baker Street, where Sherlock Holmes lived. So I suppose so. Yeah.
Gail was in London last fall for something she was working on with the EDT crew, and I asked her to go by and take a picture of 221B Baker Street. She declined the honor. She spent her days shopping instead.
But she brought you cigars, Tom. So
she did bring me genuine Cuban cigars, which more than made up.
Get you a hat and a pipe.
No. She did take a picture in the cigar shop, though. I guess it's a famous shop, of the chair that Churchill would sit in when he came to the shop. The shop was, I don't know. I'll dig out the name and get you. Apparently it was close to Parliament, and he actually had a favorite chair, and there's a big sign on it, "Don't sit in this chair under penalty of death." So she took a picture of the chair that Winston Churchill actually sat and smoked a cigar when he popped into the store.
When he traveled to America during Prohibition, he took with him a doctor's prescription specifying that he had to consume a lot of alcohol each day because of his health.
That's funny. So how did you get into this crazy business? That's we always try to tee this off. I mean, why didn't you do something sane for a living?
Well, I did. I left school at 18 with no qualifications, no higher A levels as we call them.
Right.
So my most recent exams I sat when I was 15 or 16. I came out of school not knowing what I wanted to do, and tried all sorts of different jobs, and ended up being a forester for a couple of years. That's what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until one legal tech quite recently, where I was having lunch, as I usually do, with an American cousin of mine in New York, in Manhattan, and he told me that back in the mid 17th century, my family was part of a consortium with the Royal Charter to lumber the whole of North America to provide wood for the settlers. So that gave me my roundy moment. That explained why I loved the idea of being in woods and being a forester. and yet no one else in my immediate family could understand it at all. They all did completely different things.
Interesting.
So I was a forester, and pursuing forestry for one reason or another did not become at all feasible for me. So I thought, well, I'll come up to London and try a job and get some money and see what a desk job's like. And I had all sorts of temporary jobs, just trying to earn money and find out about life. And then a friend of mine was working at a large law firm, was moaning about the amount of work he had. And I said, well, if you need a hand, give me a ring. And that was back in August 1982. And I went into what is now Hogan Lovells, and 12 or 13 years later, I left and went to Simmons & Simmons. And it just turned out that I was liking it. I don't know if you follow opera, but the opera HMS Pinafore, where the ruler of the Queen's Navy got to that position because he polished up the handle of the front door so well. And I kind of just did my job very well and kept on doing it, and things started happening around me. I delivered. I liked the challenge. I didn't panic. I wasn't scared of technology when it came out, which was quite some time after I started. So really, I suppose laziness is how I ended up where I am, because I just didn't go anywhere else.
Well, and a common theme in our interviews.
What, being rewarded for laziness?
Yes, well, it's I mean, I can't speak, of course, for every attorney in the U.S., but that's certainly why I went to law school. I was coming up 3 months shy of graduating my undergrad and said, "Oh my God, I got to do something," and I'm ill prepared to go to work in the real world. What else can I do? Oh, law school. So, yeah.
Although I think that someone who's a forester, that kind of goes against the laziness part, and
Well, we've had I won't name names because I just don't want to get them wrong. Obviously, they said it on the show, but we've had people who were cab drivers, were in cosmetology school. I'm trying to think. There were a couple other,
just random,
totally non-related.
Yeah.
Well, I have had other careers as well. Things like a dustbin man, a carpenter, a door-to-door salesman, a liveried footman, and various other things.
Footman,
As I
really?
said, I tried lots of different things before I found something that fitted my keen sense of doing right and getting things done and justifying people's reliance and trust in me. It's a great place to be. If you have honor and a commitment to help other people, then I think being in this kind of career is a perfect place to allow you to take. I enjoy taking the pressure off people, of making them feel that it's all okay, of swallowing the grenades in a Hulk-like way, so that things just happen smoothly with minimum fuss and maximum efficiency. And it's in ways it's like it's just a logic problem. Most of the time, it's how do I deal with this person? How do I deal with this situation? What's the most efficacious way of making this all good? It's a constant challenge. You never know. And that's also the big thing, the variety. Never knowing what's going to happen each day is something I thrive on. I couldn't work in a supermarket or at a desk being an accountant or something. It would just bore me to death.
Right. And it's a good point. The technology itself, I mean, anyone can learn technology. Right. But that doesn't make you good at your job, and definitely not
Except
in this
for lawyers.
Yeah, it's really
it makes the lawyer stand out.
Yeah. But the psychological part of it, and the ability to read people, to especially attorneys can many times be tough and impatient, and they a lot of times they are the smartest person in the room, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand and that they know this side of what we're doing. So having that ability to just put them at ease and explain and keep things moving is really, really essential and important in our roles.
So are those often overbearing characteristics of American trial attorneys? Brash, wait to the last minute, loud. Obviously, if not the smartest bear in the forest, they all think they're the smartest bear in the forest.
And become the loudest.
And therefore become the loudest to prove that. Are those characteristic of British attorneys or people or trial attorneys in other parts of the world?
Barristers.
In my experience, yes. Here we have distinct branches, I think, as you know. Instead of just having attorneys who are trial or otherwise, I suppose, we have barristers who have the right of audience, and then we have the solicitors who are sort of behind the seat of power, if you like, literally in court, handing post-its forward to the barrister who's advocating. Yes, they are. And those who, if you, they're like rats in a way. If you lord over them with your knowledge of eDiscovery or computers, then they come out fighting. They don't turn over and say, they don't roll over and say, no, you're right, you know a lot more about this than I do. It's very few of them who have the chutzpah to admit that and allow it to happen and give you space. Most of them, and this is changing, this is a rather anachronistic view now, most of them will accept that they don't have all the strengths in that room, and they've been taught to come out shouting Sparta and to fight at all costs because that's the way to win, shock and awe. So yeah, you get that a lot. And you have, when I was a liveried footman, I learnt the art of insulting with praise.
There you
So
go.
you could turn a phrase that sounds good, but when you analyze it, you've just been shat on from a very great height. That
So
diplomacy,
you should
having
be a
this,
judge then.
yeah, so that has been said to me. And having the strength of your own convictions and knowing that you're right and you can't back away, but you have to allow space for the other people to concede gently with face. These are all important attributes. And touching on something, Rachi, that you touched on, I think, I find that, yes, you can teach people how to become relativity masters or how to use iConnect with all the bells and whistles, but you can't teach in a classroom that experience of interacting with all sorts of people from a position of strength or from a position of weakness, but knowing you're right. And also, as a consultant, challenging deadlines, which are always set by people who have absolutely no idea what's actually involved in delivering to that deadline. You can't just roll over and say, okay, we'll work every weekend for the rest of my life until we deliver on that. If you just turn around and say, do you seriously need it by then? Do you know what's involved? And then when they have, they then understand. You can't learn that in a classroom.
Or you say to them, it will cost 4 times as much if you want it by then. I can have it to you Monday for a quarter of the price. Oh, all right then.
That old trinity of
which, if you're doing your own consulting, works well. But if you're working for someone, then who cares if it costs 4 times as much? It's still my weekend that I'm giving up.
Exactly.
So,
So your comment about rats it puts me in the mind of an old joke. You may have heard it, but have you heard how scientists doing studies at UCLA are now using third-year law students for some of their experiments? It's because there's some things that rats just won't do.
And that's also the thing that's changed as well in that I've seen in when I started in law before computers, in days of golf ball typewriters and stuff. English law firms, and I think also American law firms, were built very much on the English public school, or private school as you call it, English public school structure, in that you would enter as a third former or a trainee solicitor or an article clerk as they were then, and you would go through various rites of passage as you go up through the school until you get to the sixth form and the sixth form common room, where you were prefects, you had little boys fagging for you, going to get your beer or to run your bath for you. And this was all the rite of passage. And you endured all of this rubbish to get up to the top of the heap. And then at the top, before you left and went to university, you could sit there as the king of the entire domain that you'd crawled through with your feet up, smoking your cigar, having people bring you things and beating the odd thing that didn't bring you what you wanted. That was this law firm structure. Up until partnership being the sixth form common room, and then you could put your feet up, sit in the club all day, and just shoot the breeze with other rich people, getting money off. That all went about 10 years ago, and all of a sudden, those people working hard to come up through that structure didn't have the end. There wasn't an end to the rainbow for them. They had to keep working even harder, having been through all that crap to get to what they thought was heaven, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Why do you think that changed?
That changed because that changed at the point where lawyers couldn't submit a bill to a client based not on the amount of work they did, but on how rich the client was, how much in debt the lawyer was. When transparency came into the entire process, when we never submitted narratives with bills, we just submitted bills.
Right.
You didn't have to justify it. You're a gentleman. Your word is your honor is your bond. You don't need to swear oaths. You don't need anyone to question your word because you're a gentleman. You're a lawyer, and that meant everything. And up until about 8 to 10 years ago, charlatans could hide in law firms, just charging lots of money for not doing very much. Work in progress would be a little puzzle maintained by the top partners. That all went when law firms started to become businesses. And I think that's a very positive thing.
Yeah.
When they had to be transparent about how much they charged different clients for different pieces of work, they had to compete. The monopoly has been going with ASBs and ALSPs and things like that. It's a questionable profession now, not just a totally accepted, it could do what it liked because they were gentlemen.
Right.
And that's almost about the time that you got out, right, of the law firms. I mean,
Yeah.
that's right
there's,
around
no
the time that
causal,
you.
there's no causal link. I would
Okay.
I was head of litigation technology at DLA Piper in London, which is how that's where my network in the US, where my ILTA involvement and things started. But in 2010, my team was made redundant, and that's when I jumped to the consultant side and joined EY. So I've been nearly 30 years in law firms, and then I switched to consulting and found it so much easier, so much less onerous, so much less pressure in terms of running a business rather than in delivering on timescales and things like that. Always the pressure there. Right. I like that. But you didn't have to, in a consulting business, having a chat like this is actually building the business. Whereas in a law firm, having a chat like this is actually negative profit.
Right.
You know, I'm a drain on the fee earners. That's why that phrase non-lawyer came about. The thing I absolutely hate, defining someone in a law firm as a non-lawyer in a derogatory sense.
Yeah.
I think that now it's taken a long time, and I'm sure there's a lot further to go, but now there is a growing acceptance of other professionals in law firms to help deliver on the entire business, not just the academic lawyers picking English apart and things like that.
Right.
There's much more of awareness of driving a business forward, not just being some hallowed black box.
And I think that's why you've seen the position of whatever you want to call it today, the litigation support manager, the eDiscovery manager, the IT director. They're still not quite partner level in law firms, but their power and their ability to affect change has absolutely grown within the firms, because now all of a sudden it's recognized that it's such an integral part of the business that you can't survive as a firm without those types of people, and that most of those people are pretty smart. They know what they're doing, and even if they are non-lawyers. So
I think also that it's easier with a lit sup person, because there's that continual debate as to whether they're chargeable or non-chargeable. I happen to believe that most of what they do is chargeable, and therefore they are part of the fee earning community, or can be part of the fee earning community, or have a good argument for being part of the fee earning community. Therefore, the lawyers are happier to embrace them because they're partially of the same breed. Right. Whereas a marketing guy is just a marketing, every salary paid to a non-lawyer is less profit for the partners.
For the partners, yep. So I have a question. Over the last 25 years, I've observed that it always seemed like the UK in particular, but in general the non-US, when it came to the technology and whether it be general litigation technology, eDiscovery, anything technology based, outside the US was always behind. Always lagging, sometimes quite a ways back. And I've seen over the last probably 6-7 years that shifted, that it seems like things have caught up. I'm wondering, you having actually been in it, and you're our first non-US based guest that we're having, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, did you recognize that as a litigation support manager you were in 3-4 different firms, and then even when you started in EY and in the consulting, and then went off on your own to do consulting, is that something that was like recognizable, that your clientele and that the things that you had to work with were behind? And then at what point did you realize that, like, were catching up. If you did recognize that, I mean, that's always been my impression. Am I right, or is that, no? We were always
like most things, yes and no.
Stupid Americans.
Certainly America was always ahead in the beginning. You were using databases and OCRing documents way before anybody else was, back in the 80s. We looked at the American approach, and as a profession, there was no before at that point. There was just photocopying, and then there was scanning, and then there was objective review, so that you could find the stuff you scanned, and then you top up that with subjective review to give some meat to the important documents. We didn't OCR, or if we did OCR, we only OCR'd the really important stuff. You, on the other hand, would bulk OCR everything. You had no problems with storage cost. You had no problem with scanning cost. We had a much more slower, more quizzical approach. We didn't just embrace it. And this may be shown in the fact that our proportionality rules came in long before yours did.
Right.
So we've always had an eye on that. In terms of the legal profession embracing technology, I think we've all done it at roughly the same speed. I think we started the race later than you guys, there's no doubt about that. But I think also in our handling of it, because we've had this proportionality thing where we don't have the no longer necessary American ethos of turning over every stone, we can think more about the applicability of the technology. We don't just throw shock and awe, we don't just do shock and awe, which has always been the American way. Dealing with other jurisdictions, or indeed dealing with large amounts of stuff. It's just go in there loud and fast and hard, and win the day that way. So I think that we haven't had, and also I think American lawyers are much more disposed towards getting into the science behind the technology. You have a lot more white papers being drafted over in the US about AI and machine learning and things like that, whereas we just are slow to accept. But once we accept, that's it. That's fine with us. There's a degree of trust. You have to hand over trust to the technology, because not everyone's going to want to. I don't understand it, what goes on behind the scenes. I just trust through experience. I'm sure if we all quizzed a lot of the technology, we would find so many holes that we just don't want to go there. It's like eDiscovery. Back in the day of emails and stuff like that, in the UK, the approach to it was, well, the lawyers know that there's this thing called electronic stuff, but if we don't mention it and sweep it back under that really big carpet again, then the other side will keep it under that carpet. We don't have to open that can of worms. So there was a degree of, well, A, technology is beneath us because we're gentlemen, and B, we'll find it all in the paper anyway, and we all do paper, and our procedural rules don't allow for anything electronic, so we don't have to go there. But I think now it's like the old days where Toshiba and Compaq were kind of leapfrogging each other in terms of laptops, size and external size and volume hard drive, kind of laptop frogging each other. I think now that we're both in the same race, going sometimes a bit faster, sometimes a bit slower, but always going. And I think there's so much more connectivity between our jurisdictions, not just in terms of common law, but also in terms of approach to the technology. And there's more of an acceptance here, as there already has been in the US. I think that it's something that we're never going to get rid of, and we just have to get on with it and make the most use of it we can, and not let it drive us. I think that's always the big problem, is though the computer says X, therefore we have to do X. No, the computer's not going to replace us. The computer has to be schooled in how to replicate us, and then constantly trained and checked and running, sit exams and stuff to prove that it's still thinking in the same way. And we now get all this bias material coming in, which is a very correct thing to look at to make sure conscious or unconscious bias. It's fascinating, all this. You probably get. I love tech because it makes my life easier and more fun. Not because it's interesting in its own right, although it can be. I love gadgets. I love things that are fun to interact with or do really cool stuff. But I don't want my house to be part of the Internet of Things. I don't want my fridge telling me when to go and get milk. I don't want Amazon sending me more carrots because they know I've run out. Right. I don't want that to happen. I want to be risk-free and private, but have all the benefits at the same time. Like your average Amazon user, I suppose.
Right. Which then, of course, starts tying into the whole privacy aspect of
Yes.
technology and what are we willing to give up in order to have those benefits? And I think that's one area where the UK and Europe in general have been way ahead of the US.
Yes.
And
We have a good reason. We have good historical reasons for that. I think, as
Yeah.
you all know, Rachi, it's various pogroms over time. It's Nazi Germany. There are reasons for trumpeting privacy in Europe because it's been such a war-torn part of the world.
Right.
There's been so much prohibition, prejudice, death as a result of people being collected together for their own private likes and dislikes and religion and all the rest of it. So that there's a good reason for America, the land of the free, to shy away from privacy.
Correct.
Everyone has the right to bear arms. You have the equality of man. You have all these sorts of things that fly in the face of privacy, but at the same time underpin privacy.
Right. Yeah, that's obvious. I mean, and we're not going to get political here, but it's obviously one of those
No.
those contradictions that I think a lot of people struggle with is just how to bring all of those different things, because they are the underpinnings of democratic society and
Yeah.
a free country. But I think that
To bring that back,
Yeah.
I've ever since GDPR became a twinkle in Germany and France's eyes, I've been surprised that the eDiscovery industry has been so free of any investigation or penalties in terms of privacy, because we get PII the whole time across all our
Everything we do.
documents.
Right.
We gaily
Right.
throw it on the floor of our cutting rooms when we reduce volume. We do email threading and deduplication and stuff, and then we gaily pass it on to someone who's got nothing to do with the original people's PII, and they gaily pass it on to the next person. It then goes to court. It's PII is all over everything we do, and yet nobody has been penalized or asked whether they are compliant with that.
You do have the litigation exceptions, and
Yes,
that's been built in, which was I think something that when GDPR was the buzzword of 3 years ago, or really 4 years ago, as it was leading up to GDPR.
I can take you earlier than that with Judge Shinden. I can take you back to Sedona in Washington in about 2007,
Right.
where we had a long discussion with Judge and others on the panel about whether we should even go there with redaction of PII in Discovery as it was at that point. And we just came to the conclusion it was too big a headache, too expensive to worry about.
Right.
So let's move on until someone forces us to do
it. Yep.
Yeah.
So
why no investigations? Why has that not occurred, Jonathan?
I don't know. I was on record saying that when GDPR comes into effect, the authorities are going to want some early scalps. Look out, eDiscovery providers.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be looked at. No, nothing.
Yeah.
And here, I mean, we've had really nothing major.
Yeah, no, even with the California privacy laws, I mean, that act, I mean, all of these things that our industry is very good at raising the alarm and getting people scared, and basically it's vendors trying to say you must use this new product or you must be prepped and we're going to come in and help you get there for what seemed on the most part non-issues when it actually comes into reality. And some of that could be the question of, okay, is this the Y2K of the modern era?
Yes.
Well, we're well prepared and therefore it's not an issue, or is it that it wasn't an issue to begin with? So so let's switch to modern times. So you right now are you have your own consulting firm.
Yeah.
So my first question on that is what was it like going from the law firm environment and then the large consulting companies, EY, Concilio, and then going out on your own? I mean, that must have been to some degree scary, or was it just like, nope, I'm ready for this and I'm just going to jump right in?
Well, the biggest change in my career in terms of how I felt about it was leaving law. That idea that, not that idea, but being constantly under pressure to do billable hours. It was lovely, when I would do, I'd go onto websites that I couldn't fee earn. So we have a website here, a kind of slightly scandalous legal website called Roll on Friday that has the gossip. And it's always good fun to get on there and have some chats with people anonymously and stuff. And I would do that at lunchtime because I felt that I was stealing time from my employer by not fee earning. Going into consultancy, you realize that you don't actually have to run everywhere when you don't need to. Not every hour is billable, but every hour is useful and can help build the practice. So, going to drinks, networking drinks was building the practice because you were building your employer's network and your network. Whereas in a law firm, that's completely frowned upon because it's not earning fees. So that was the biggest change. And it took me, frankly, quite a few years to leave that law firm mindset behind and become slightly less pressured. It meant that I was still a lot more pressured than my colleagues. And you may be touching on this, my daily email, my bong, came about because I discovered that the people I was working with who'd never been in law firms didn't really understand the pressures, the risks, the needs, the information that passes by osmosis between lawyers because they understand the reasons for a question or the answer, whereas someone in a consultancy had absolutely no idea. I remember a long time ago going to at a law firm, going to a demo of an IT system with lawyers and obviously the people who had the system brought it in. And at the end of the meeting, 2 hours, the first hour explaining the general technology, the lawyers then fall asleep, and then you spend the next hour trying to prove why your technology is better than anybody else's on deaf ears. We came out of that meeting after 2 hours, and the salesman from the IT company came up to me and said, "Jonathan, who's this Fiona they keep talking about, and why is she so important?" And I didn't know. That's fee earner. That for me just highlighted the lack of understanding of the market. Yep. So it was educating. When I was at Huron and EY, I had great fun helping the team to learn about the profession they were selling into, so they could understand better and service better and question better and answer better and so on. So that was great, using my experience to do that. Then I was headhunted out of EY to run Huron's London office, which was enormous fun. And that was great turning that around. Then we were bought by Concilio, and I left Concilio after about 6-7 months or something. And I had some money in my pocket, and I thought, well, if I don't have a go now, I never will. I have a network that's good. I have a name that's good. I have a brand that's good. Let's give it a shot and see. I've got the time, the space. I don't have young children anymore. They're now teenagers at college and university. So it seemed like a perfect time. And it's been what I relish most about this. It's being able to make connections with whom I want, when I want. Right. So I can connect two companies together who have no ultimate value to me, but who I know would work well together and have a combined service offering that would be unparalleled. And it's great to do things like that, to nurture, to mentor mentor startups and help with go-to-market strategies and things. It's just the freedom to do what I'm good at when I want. Yep. Subject to the odd pandemic or two getting in the way, of course.
We do have to ask that question. How has that impacted your business and your approach to the market right now?
It has made things go a lot slower. It has reduced my pipeline. It's meant that I've had to think of alternatives to get my brand out and to keep it in front of people. And my bong has been the best investment ever, because that gets out in front of so many people on a regular basis.
Yeah. How many
I'm sure we wouldn't be having this conversation. What?
How many people subscribe to the bong?
There's a difference between, and I'm not being oozy about it, there's a difference between the number who subscribe and the number who actually get it.
You get it, right.
So there are a lot of large organizations where one person gets it and then forwards it around the organization. Yep. So it's not many. It's direct mails of less than 300 people.
Wow.
But I get so much repeat from it.
Right.
I
a lot of
people now
exposure
that
too.
Yeah, exactly.
Something
exactly.
And then I repost it, and then I tell a friend, and he tells a friend.
Yep. Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
Is there any truth to the rumor that you were originally going to call it Bonkers?
No, that's after the Bates machine. No, it's called
I
bonk
believe you might
because
have a prop to show us here.
I beg your pardon.
You might have a prop that you could show for the
those-
people who are
This
not
hasn't
familiar
been-
with
This
this.
hasn't been.
For those of our
This
listeners
hasn't
who
been
aren't
fed
aware of
ahead.
what we're talking about, which is
This
always
is while I'm wearing trousers. Yes, I have this thanks to my
There we
good
go.
friend Cheryl Moretti at Gibb and Dudson. Dun and Gibson, Gibb and Dudson. This is a practically unused paginator, as I call it, a bonker,
a bonker. I love it.
because of
Love it.
the sound that it makes when you do it. It goes
Oh.
bonk. It's onomatopoeic.
And there's nothing like 10 people in a room bonking away, right?
Not at all. A long time ago, back in the good old paper days, I did have a team on client site. I had a team of photocopiers, a team of gophers who would move the documents around from one point to the other, including in a van up to London.
Right.
I did have a team of bonkers who did nothing but bonk in a room by themselves because it's quite noisy. And then just to make sure
Solitary.
everything was okay, I had a slightly smaller team of bonker checkers who would go around and make sure that the bonkers were doing a good job to everyone's satisfaction. So yes.
Words that are music to the ears of many an eDiscovery vendor from the old days. Copy, label, copy.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Well, Tom, I think unfortunately we have reached that time that we are going to have to start wrapping this one up.
All right. Jonathan, at this time of the proceedings, as you're probably aware, we ask our guests to give us the name or names of someone from our profession who they really would like to spend some time with. And it need not be a professional discussion. It would be somebody you would like to just sit down and have a glass of wine, chew the fat, as we like to say. The only caveat is people from our profession, although it need not be a professional discussion. So basically, somebody you like, or if they're no longer with
Or
us,
dislike.
or even dislike.
Yeah.
Found interesting. Yes. So
I never thought of that. That's a very good point.
yes. So take it away. Who would you choose to spend some time with?
Thank you. I didn't need to give much thought to this. I thought I could, like most people, I thought I could give a clever answer. I could give a self-inflating answer. I could give a marketing answer. But then it occurred to me that what I really like to do is to catch up with people. I love converting my professional network into a social network. I love, like Chris Dale, taking people to my home and sharing my countryside and my hearth and table with people. So that's the thing I really miss during this pandemic is not being able to be with people. But I enjoy the informality of video chats that has developed as a result of all of this. So the people I would like within this profession, it was going to be 3 people. I was going to be selfish, and now I've decided to make it 4 people. Those people in order of distance, in a way, are Browning Marian, Nigel Murray, Stephen Shancroft, and of course, with your blessing, Tom, Gail O'Connor. I would just love, over the years, we've had, with all of those people, I've had enormous fun, drunken chats, informative chats, helpful chats, funny chats. I would just like to sit down again with all my people in front of a fire with an unending supply of food and drink of everyone's taste, and just laugh, remember, reminisce, joke like we all used to do. I would love to do that again. I won't. All of those people have been taken early, and all of them without my awareness that something was imminent. So I never had a chance to have a final chat or anything like that. I'd just like it to be back like it was. Maybe in the bar at the Warwick during Legal Tech, all just sitting around in a dark corner, getting quietly drunk and having fun and waving at people at the bar. That is what I would like to do.
Well, that's great. That's a great group of people. I can see the image of the Warwick over in the corner at a round table. Those 4 people. It would be an irresistible group. It would soon turn into 12 or 15 because who could resist sitting down and talking to you and that group of people, right?
And the amount of laughter that would be coming out of there. I mean, just the sheer joy of that group together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. Great conversation, great memories, great perspective. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I, like you, terribly miss. I never really liked Legal Tech New York. I liked going there and seeing all my friends.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
and in the old days at the ABA Tech Show, we used to gather in the lobby bar. I've mentioned this before at 10 or 11 as people were coming back from all
Yes.
their dinners. And of course, those were back in the days when you could smoke in a bar. And the same thing. We just would gather and start to tell lies, basically. How
Yeah, working
important and
completely
influential we all were.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for sharing that with us. Really enjoyed
Thank you
talking.
both
with you.
very
And
much.
hopefully, we'll
Very
see you at a show in the not too distant future.
Very
Rocky,
much.
thank you as always, and
Thank you, Tom.
we'll see all the rest of you next time in the eDiscovery zone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye bye.